Recruiter Q&A giveaway. This week we have Craig and Peter from Go Healthcare Staffing. We will also be giving away another beach towel because just because summer's over doesn't mean you don't need a beach towel. And if you're not somewhere near the beach or anything like that, ask these guys for an assignment near it, and then you can use it. So to be entered to win the beach towel, you will just need to ask questions in the comment section, and then we'll randomly pick a winner at the end. So now I would like to introduce you to Craig and Peter. So give them 1 second for them to get on there, and we'll get to meet them. Hi, guys.
Hey, Rachel. How's it going today?
Good. How are you?
We're doing fantastic. It's a beautiful day here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Good.
That's very nice. Hot or cold?
It's pretty hot. It's been a stretch of 90-degree days here the past week or so. I think we've had rain in about a month.
Wow. Well, enjoy that because it's getting cold where I am.
We're kind of looking forward to fall, thanks.
Well, thank you for joining us, and we will let you get to it. Gypsies, go ahead and ask your questions.
What's that? Yeah, so Peter, it's been quite a week so far, huh?
It has been. Placing a lot of nurses in a lot of different parts around the country.
Yeah, the industry's really been hot over the past, 6 months or so. Lots of needs coming in from across the country.
Where have you been getting a lot of your jobs lately, Craig?
It's really been all over. We've seen a wealth of positions through the Carolinas and some of the major healthcare systems there. Down in New Orleans and Louisiana, there's been quite a few jobs. It seems like our bread and butter is a lot in the Midwest. But it's really seems
Ohio has been hot.
Yeah, Ohio's always hot.
Yep.
So it's been fun to be able to just work across the country with a variety of different types of specialties and locations. We seem to be having some technical difficulties here on accessing the feed. Questions, if you can bear with us 1 second.
I guess while we're doing that, we can talk a little bit about Go Healthcare Staffing and where we're located, Charlotte, North Carolina, and a little bit about our agency. We're a boutique agency here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We definitely like to customize our role more on the one-on-one basis with our nurses. We do staff across the United States, and all specialties. We like to hit everything we can in a acute care center, whether that be a trauma center or an acute care center. But one of the advantages you have working with Go Healthcare Staffing is that one-on-one personal team. There's basically we've got Andre, Craig, myself on the staffing side. So you're dealing with one of 3 recruiters if you're calling into Go Healthcare Staffing. A couple of account managers, Jordan, Amber, Jenny, all part of the team here. And so we're a small company, but we like to customize what we do to all of our nurses and make sure that we can satisfy all the needs we have.
Yeah, I would say that's. Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. And just to back up, as we, this is our first attempt at a Facebook Live transmission here. There's probably a lot of nurses out there that aren't even really familiar with our organization. We've been in business for about 4 years, and just a bit of history about myself, about Peter, and the team in general. 4 years ago, the organization was started basically at the root of, trying to, start a staffing firm within the travel nursing space that did things a little bit differently, and there's a lot of agencies that are, out there that say that same type of thing, and that's probably the tagline for 50 agencies, that are under the sun. But I think what makes us really different, as it relates to that piece, is, the work that's been done to build the company, from the ground up. I think every nurse that works with us can probably tell, that the placement process, we try to keep things as simple as possible, and really do things, the way that we would want, things to be done to ourselves, in terms of treatment, and really, the golden rule. And that's been our mantra, technically from day one, is to really, do things the right way. And we're not always perfect, but at the end of the day, I think we really do things extremely well and extremely efficient. Me personally, I came, from agency Cirrus Medical Staffing. Previously, I worked there for 10 years and decided to leave and start Go Healthcare with some other individuals. And I think one of the things, that drew me to that, was one, a challenge, but two, looking at, what was done right at a, prior firm and taking that over to another organization to basically recreate that. And, I know a lot about the industry, in terms of ebbs and flows, in terms of where hospitals, not only are located at, but also where are good placements for nurses. So many agencies oftentimes are also, just putting a nurse into a job. That's the last thing we want to do. Putting somebody into a position and it being successful is a huge thing for us. So that's a little bit about myself, a little bit about the firm, kind of how we came about here. I'll let Peter introduce himself, and then we'll field some of these other questions that are coming in. Now we're up and running and we're good to go.
Absolutely. So, guys, my name is Peter. I've been a recruiter now with Go Healthcare for going on a year now, and I unlike Craig, have not been in the healthcare industry. I've actually come from hospitality. So I've spent most of my career in the hospitality industry with the restaurant industry, cafe industry. But I've been pretty much in, I don't know, about 7 different cities on the East Coast. So I'm very well versed in things all the way up and down the East Coast of the United States. Lived in New York, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., Florida, Charlotte, New Orleans, just been all over the place. So I know a lot about the areas that you all are looking at. And hospitality is not much different than nursing in the fact that, it's a customer service based industry. It's, we're here to service you guys and, get y'all where you need to be, make sure that you're happy in a contract. And so it's not a lot different in the hospitality industry. So I've been enjoying doing this for the last year. Love working with Craig. Actually met Craig through the hospitality industry itself. And he brought me on board about a year ago. So,
yeah, I mean, that's a funny story in itself. I'm often ragged on here in the office because I am a big Groupon fan.
Frugal. He's frugal.
Yeah. A dollar saved is a dollar earned. And, I through that frugalness, decided to take my wife out for a wine tasting one night, and next thing you know, Peter is the sommelier. Who is is it a certified sommelier?
Certification.
Okay. And so that turned into basically meeting Peter, and next thing you know, five years down the road, we crossed paths, and we're sitting in the war room recruiting. Oh, hey Sarah, how are you?
And we know a lot of nurses out there do like wine.
Oh,
so if there's any wine questions, you can field those to us as well. We'll see what we can do to help you out there.
He knows about all kinds of wines, from Boone's Farm to...
Do not know anything about Boone's Farm.
You name it.
Any questions for us out there? And when you do, just let us kind of know where you're at.
Anybody out there on contract now in Charlotte?
Depends on what cheese is going to be in the grilled cheeses. The way I would put that, but I would go with a something chilled. Nice, light, crisp white wine chilled, probably on a grilled cheese.
Does that include grilled cheeses made with American cheese?
Absolutely. I don't think you can go wrong with anyone for a grilled cheese.
We also have another food question here. What pairs well with pizza? Extremely important to know when you go to order pizza.
I'll be honest with you, Craig. A lot of our nurses eat lots of pizza, and I personally would go with a New Zealand Shiraz with that.
I'm more of a beer guy, so when it comes to pizza beer seems to be a timeless combination that always works. Maybe a question to ask some of the nurses that are out there as well. I mean, in terms of importance to the nurse and the agencies, are there any specific things that you evaluate about the companies as you go through talking with different agencies that we could shed light that we offer?
Things you're looking for in an agency that we can help to answer.
And I think one of the things about Go Healthcare Staffing, I know I mentioned a number of things what I feel stands out about us. But just kind of going back to, I mean, the fact of the personalized attention that you get. One of the things I tell all the nurses that I work with that are kind of my three pillars of making sure that we do just a great job for them. One, there's so many stories within the industry of a nurse has a problem on a contract and they go to get an answer from their recruiter and they can't find them, or they get called back 2 days later, and a lot of times nurses that we work with, you might not need us every single day, but when you do, you have to be able to get in contact with us. And one of the things that we do that's huge is all of our nurses have all of our cell phone numbers. All of our nurses are able to text us to the office lines. My wife knows that I work pretty much around the clock as it relates to following up with nurses and things like that, because that's just the nature of the business.
I want to say hi to Helen real quick in Louisville.
Oh, hey, Helen. And
we got a quick question in regards to where would you go if you were a nurse looking for a travel contract? Where would you wind up at, Craig?
Where would I end up? I love the beach and I love the mountains. If I'm hunting down a particular contract, I want to go somewhere that's going to give me ample things to do outside of work. But at the same time, I'm not going to sacrifice that for a facility or an environment that's going to put me in jeopardy of losing my license or just treating me bad. Not every hospital needs travelers because it's just such a terrible place to work. But the place that I look for really would be somewhere where I could blend those two things together. And then also places where I'm able to maximize what I make by looking at the cost of living. If I'm looking at a contract that's in Los Angeles and it's going to cost me $3,000 a week, to find a place to stay. I know that's probably a little bit of an exaggeration. But I mean, there's so many nurses that we talk with that, they're traveling away from their family, and if I'm leaving them, to go elsewhere, ultimately my, it's got to be worth my time.
Yeah, and I think to answer Sarah's question a little bit here is asking about high paying packages. I think that's part of it is, I'd want to travel where I do get a high paying package, something that works well for me. I think that's ideal. Obviously California being one of those markets that's a high paying market. But on the flip side of that, I also want to see, I want to see family, family away from where my immediate family is and see where some relatives are at and possibly go see, cousins, aunts, uncles, whatever that might be, and get closer to them is I guess what I would look for in a contract to be able to see some of those folks I don't get to see a whole lot.
The other questions on here are the statements, making sure our badges and passwords work when we get to the facility. I think that's an excellent point. I don't think there's a recruiter that's out there that hasn't dealt with a nurse that has started a contract, and for whatever reason, they can't get into the Pyxis, they can't get into the EMR system. Every hospital seems to have a different method of orienting the nurses. We recently had a nurse pair that was working for us in rural Tennessee, and the orientation process at that hospital, was far less than what you would see at a major, healthcare system like down, here in Charlotte. And when I say that, it's more like, here's the unit, here's the stuff, let's hit the road and let's go. So I think that's a really great point, looking at, how a hospital is set up and how they're prepared to onboard a traveler. I mean, it definitely varies from place to place. And what we try to do as recruiters, obviously, is to try to get, as much of that stuff squared away before you start. The last thing we want is somebody to start a position and it not be something that starts smooth.
Yeah, and speaking a little bit to that, with working with an individual like Craig, who's been doing this for 15 plus years, he's got experience in dealing with the different hospitals and the different nuances that are out there. And so, as a new recruiter coming on board, it takes you a while to get your legs to try and figure out what these facilities, and relying on somebody like Craig, who's been there and done that. Now, with the year under my belt and learning about the facilities that we're dealing with, having repeat nurses go into the facilities, knowing what the nuances are of them, I think that tends to help with it. And we know the questions to ask or have our nurses ask during the orientation process to ensure that those types of things with badges, security clearances, Pyxis are all getting taken care of prior to the nurse actually hitting the floor.
Yeah, I mean, it's imperative, especially a first-time traveler. If you come with us and we set you up on a contract where a lot of that is not squared away on the front end, then your experience went from I'm excited to travel to this is an environment and a terrible situation for me because it was not started smoothly. So I mean, it's something that we definitely put a priority on prior to getting everybody started to do as best as we possibly can.
We had another question coming in regards to other areas and good pay package. I think we're seeing good pay packages coming in from a lot of different areas. From the state of New York, we're getting a lot of things, especially in the New York City area. We had several things coming in on Long Island recently. Upstate New York, we've had a few things come in from there. The Pennsylvania market, Eastern Pennsylvania, most especially, where we've had some good packages come in from that point. Where we're at in the Southeast United States, we don't get extremely high-paying jobs down here, but as you had mentioned earlier, Craig, we started seeing some things come in from University of Tulane. Had some really good pay packages come in recently, and that's a little bit higher than what we're used to seeing for the Southeast United States. Oklahoma, we usually have some very good success in the Oklahoma market, seeing some good pay packages there. Kansas, since they have joined the compact, I think we've seen some good pay packages coming in from the Wichita market and some of our partners there. Anything else you could think of?
I think one of the things that's a huge thing to look at, is how the compact license, kind of affects the rates. As you look at where a nurse is going, to look at assignments. I mean, when somebody comes to us and they're looking for the highest paying positions that are out there, I mean, you're going to have to go to the states where, they're not the compact licenses, and I mean, it's a supply and demand type of thing. If we're looking at a position in Pennsylvania, for a telemetry nurse, and we're working with a rate of, $80 an hour as a bill rate, then we may look in Charlotte, North Carolina, where they've got a $60 an hour rate, so what are the differences that are there? Pennsylvania does offer a temp license, but that process can still take a little while, and a lot of hospitals in those states, can't depend on that board of nursing to really be efficient. And so their pool is smaller. So, you kind of have to go that extra step as a nurse to get into the ball game in those states to be able to be competitive and secure those jobs, and I think that's something that we see time and time again, unless there's a state where it's a really difficult, place to staff. I mean, Oklahoma, which has recently turned compact, a lot of times it's not on everybody's bucket list to go there. Not because Oklahoma's, a bad state. I've been there a couple times. We've staffed a lot of nurses there, but, it's just somewhere where, we don't have a lot of requests. People that go in there basically strictly for the pay, unless you, live there, or if, you have to be somewhat close by there, or, it just happens to be on your bucket list.
I want to welcome Angela to the conversation. Angela, just let us know if you have any questions. We're more than happy to answer them for you.
It was an earthquake here in the office.
7.0. Okay, but we'll continue on the housing topic.
Yeah. So as far as housing goes, with our organization, I mean, I think over the past 10 years or so, we've seen a lot of a shift from nurses wanting, the corporate housing, it's turnkey, furnished, house first packages, vacuums, bed sheets, all that stuff, to something that's a little bit more better in line with what that individual nurse is looking for. And with that being said, I mean, we get so few requests now for corporate housing, that we have gone out. We've partnered with a couple of organizations, that we refer our nurses to. We don't have a specific housing department. We are, almost 100% based off of the stipend, and giving the nurses the stipend. One thing that we do, as a smaller firm, and as a boutique agency, the recruiters here, help do a lot of work as far as hunting down leads for housing. I mean, there's multiple nurses that I work with, where they're working during the day or they're working at night. They need help, securing different leads. And so that's something that we do as an agency, day in and day out.
Yeah.
So
speaking of that one that we just had that came up in Newport, Vermont, not knowing a whole lot about Newport, Vermont ourselves, we had a traveler get placed at an assignment up there, which is beautiful country, cold in the winter, but as it found out after we placed the nurse in the contract, there wasn't a whole lot of housing options there. Placed a couple phone calls to a couple different people in the Newport area, reached out to a real estate company up in Newport, and it turns out that the real estate person actually was also a travel nurse specialist, and she worked quite a bit with the hospital on placing nurses. So spent a little bit of time doing that and got the nurse into a townhouse up in Newport, Vermont. And like I said, there wasn't a whole lot of options for that. So we were able to assist with that process.
Yeah, we lean a lot on, the Gypsy nurse group that has the housing listings that are in there. Furnished Finders is a lot of times, a place that we go. Airbnb. There's a number of different areas that, that we're trying to go to try to hunt down leads. The other thing that a lot of nurses forget about as well, is going right to the hospital. Sometimes HR, I mean, they're consistently staffing the facilities, and so going to the facility and asking if they have any direct housing leads sometimes yields some really good, affordable, and efficient results.
Go ahead and take that one, Craig, on Angela.
Yeah,
Thank you for the question, Angela.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It says, I've been an administrator for hospice for 4 years prior to the last year of having my own legal nurse consulting firm and doing independent hands-on patient care. That has really inhibited me on getting a contract. Ideas? So a couple of things, Angela, that you're going to run into. I mean, with our agency specifically, and I can't speak for every agency that's out there, but as this is our, kind of live broadcast here, we owe you an answer on what we can do and what we can't do. Now, the overwhelming majority of the positions that I'm going to have are going to be, direct within, the acute care facility. And your experience sounds fantastic, but what we don't have a lot of is a lot of hospice needs, and positions, that would involve, the administrative piece of hospice. We do see from time to time case management types of roles, that are intertwined with hospice. And, those are potential positions that we may be able to look at some point in time. It really kind of depends on what kind of contract you're really looking to get into. If it's a, staff hospice type of role, or if you're looking to contract as an administrator, and leverage that experience, or even the work as the legal nurse consultant, and doing independent hands-on patient care. And, my question to that would be, the independent patient care that you were doing, was this a home health care based type of care, private duty type of work? There's some things that are very challenging within all of that, and you have to understand as well, the nurse manager that's looking at your file, they're looking at their job that they've just released, and they say, I've got these holes in my schedule, I need to fill them. How do I get them filled as quick as possible so my current staff, is not put under duress for having to work additional overtime, or the patient care doesn't suffer. We don't want to lose patients from our floor. And so when they're looking at the file of the nurse coming over, they're looking at plug and play options. They're going to look at, where you've worked at, what size facility, what size units, all that stuff. And they're going to compare it to what they've got going on there on the floor, and that's their decision right there. We always say, if we can get to the point where you're interviewing, 99%, of the time we're getting offers, because that nurse manager, unless something goes awkwardly wrong on those phone calls, they're ultimately going to probably hire you based off the paperwork that we've sent over. So those are some of the challenges that you're going to run into. Is that there's only going to be so many options within that space for the nurse manager to say, yes, that's going to be a good fit for me.
Craig, I just think on Angela's point, she just followed up and she's asking. She hasn't been in a hospital setting for 5 years, so that does bring up another set of challenges that we're faced with when trying to staff into the hospitals themselves, is because they're looking for experience to be within the last 2 years in an acute care setting. And I think speaking a little bit to what the hospitals are looking for, and it's their technology has changed over the last several years in a hospital, and so they're wanting nurses that are more up to date with procedures. They're wanting nurses that are more up to date with EMRs and things like that. And I think that's part of the reason for them wanting to have a nurse that's had experience within the last couple of years. Anything add on to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's pretty accurate. She did list here, that I see patients in hospitals, just not employed at one in 5 years. So that's, I mean, when it comes back to getting references and things like that, if we're looking at a position in an acute care facility, our references have to be, from that type of setting. And you could have done the best work for, a family, and it may give you that personal reference, but, it's hard to translate that over to your file to get that, in front of a manager to where they're going to bite on you.
And Jenny has had a follow-up question in regards to the 2 years of experience before you're starting. And I think that was also going into that experience level. When we have travelers going into hospitals, experienced travelers out there are going to know that when you're getting into a floor, they want somebody that's going to come onto the floor, be up to speed as soon as possible. There's not a lot of orientation and training that goes into a travel nurse position, and so they're looking for somebody to come in and contribute day one. And when you have a nurse that doesn't quite have 2 years, you start to get into that gray area where it's going to be difficult for a brand new nurse to jump in and assist immediately. You want to talk about any of the legalities of that, or?
Oh, I mean, I think you're spot on. I mean, I think it's important to be, confident enough in your skills, to be able to step into a role like that, and be able to, the term that's always thrown out there within travel nursing is hit the ground running. I mean, if you've heard that once, you hear it about a dozen times.
Hi, Donna.
So I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it goes back to what I just was mentioning about the plug and play option. That's what the nurse manager is looking for, and ultimately, that 2 years of experience, gives enough confidence for that nurse manager to be able to say, yes, this person's coming from a like-sized facility, like-sized unit. I'm confident that I can plug them in there within the first few days of orientation and then be good to go.
Angela's coming back with just a follow up, and it is worth talking about because every situation is different, Angela. It's on a one-on-one basis. If we're talking about the fact that you've been in a hospital seeing patients, but you've not officially been into that role, that's where we've got to talk about the references and talk about who we can talk to in the hospital to verify some things so we can put it on. So it's not something that we would not want to talk to you about. And if it's something that we found that we couldn't service, I've heard Craig said a number of times he's got a number of different references that are in the industry that he could possibly refer you to try and help you out with a position in exactly where you'd be looking.
We have a question here from Angela, more of a statement, which is definitely alarming. On the last travel assignment, she said she was on a trauma unit with new nurses at a new hospital, and the only nurse who had placed a catheter or a G-tube on the first day.
That was kind of scary for a trauma unit.
Yeah, I would say so. I don't think anybody would want to be a patient on that particular unit for that day. But I'm guessing that all those patients were probably pretty lucky to have you, Angela, because without that, they may have been SOL, for a lack of better acronyms.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of acronyms in nursing, so I hope that one goes hand in hand. But yeah, that's a scary thing. Opening up a new hospital and a new unit. The challenges that a healthcare system has, staffing up that unit the first time, it's very difficult, especially if you're trying to find full-time employees. They might be better sense to mix that blend of nurses, half and half full-time employees and half travelers. So that way you have a little bit more of an experienced staff. But I think we all know when it comes to healthcare, more and more things are being, done to eliminate costs these days. And, that's unfortunate.
I think, there does come to be a point with new nurses where, they do have to be given a shot in facilities. And experienced nurses such as Angela and others that have that we've been talking to, I think it's important that that tutelage is given, the education is given to these new nurses to help bring them along, because there is such a shortage in the nursing industry that's out there that we need new nurses. So as soon as we can get them on board as a traveler 2 years in, we can assist with that process. But it's a credit to all of the experienced nurses that we have out there, to help those new nurses that are coming out of school for the first 2 years to get them up to speed as fast as possible. And we really do appreciate that.
Yeah. And the flip side of that, there have been times where, we've had nurses with less than 2 years of experience come to us, and we've had some success sometimes. I wouldn't say it's a broad stroke blanket statement, but the conversations that we have with those nurses are very much not pie in the sky. They are realistic, down to earth. We're going to shoot it to you straight, and we're going to look at your credentials before we even step foot, onto the playing field with you. To give you an example of that, we have a nurse that contracts for us down in Lawton, Oklahoma. He worked in Oklahoma City at Integris Baptist Hospital in the ER there. Super busy ER that's there. A lot of turnover, a lot of trauma, a lot of different things going on there. He was referred to us by another nurse that works for us that was actually, that actually trained him there. So she contracted for 18 months there, training new nurses that were coming in, and provided a valuable asset for her. So him coming to us with a year and a half of experience, we really kind of knew what we were working with at that point. But still the conversation with him, really centered around, you have a year and a half of experience. We're putting you into a position, where you may be competing against nurses who have 5-10 years of experience. So if you're expecting, for us to be able to demand the same rate, for you as we would for somebody with 10 years of travel experience, we're just kind of all, painting a picture here that's not going to be, something that's going to come to fruition. So, on a case by case basis, it's looked at, but a nurse has really got to be, to even have that discussion, the year and a half of experience, if you come to me with that experience, we'll have a conversation, and kind of go through, what might realistically be able to be done, and actually look at your credentials, and look at where you've worked, to see what may work. But, 90% of the time we're looking at the 2 years, and that's really where we want to stay at.
And again, Craig, circling back to the customization and the boutique agency that we have, and one of the things that we're looking at is we're looking at the experience that these nurses have within the first couple of years, and making sure that when we do place these nurses, we're not placing them above their heads. So if in the first 2 years they've worked up to a level 2 trauma center, we're not going to be putting them into a level 1 trauma center for their first experience, because it's going to come out looking bad for them. And so it's not something that they're going to have a good assignment on. And we want to basically put them where they're comfortable and not put them over their heads. So
I would 100% agree on that. Goes back, setting you up for success, not for failure. Last thing we want you to do is take a contract with us and it turn into an absolute disaster. Because the first person you're going to be calling, it's going to be me, and it's probably not going to be a real positive conversation. And we're positive people here.
Absolutely.
Just to throw it out here as a question to anybody else that may be listening and tuning in today. As far as, travel, why don't we chime in on how long some of our audience has been traveling for? What are some of the top destinations they've been to? Maybe even some of the best hospitals they've worked with. As an agency, I'll tell you, my top 5 list of hospitals, but that's only limited to where I've placed nurses at. So I think the industry should be one based off sharing of info. So if there's any top facilities out there that a nurse could say, send a nurse here, and you're guaranteed that their experience is going to be positive, we'd love to know about it. Or if there's any other places that we should never send a nurse, because there's definitely those locations as well.
That might stir up some
controversy. Yeah, that might actually be a better talking point. I also had another just point. We just received an offer on a nurse in Louisiana earlier today. And the offer itself, or the job order itself, specified a position, being a 5-2 schedule split. And for the life of me, I was trying to find out exactly how that would work. I don't know if there's a particular days each week the nurse is working, but anybody out there in TV land that could provide some insight on that question, I would love to know the answer.
Sarah is basically saying that Sanford Health in Bismarck is a very traveler-friendly destination to go to. Thank you, Sarah, for that. Appreciate it. Have you ever dealt with Sanford Health?
That is somewhere that I don't think I've ever actually had a traveler in, but that is great news to hear. A question back to Sarah. What was so traveler friendly about it? Was it, just the
staff in general, or?
We'll see if she can shoot us back a few answers here. Maybe another question out there for everybody as well, if there's any odd stories, or just, unbelievable things that have happened, while on contract.
We hear them all the time.
That, you would like to share with us. We're always entertained by a lot of things, that our workforce has to say.
And Sarah brings up a good point. In her response, it's an Epic-friendly EMR. I think our nurses that have experienced travel, with the EMR systems with Epic, tend to have better experiences. There's a lot of companies out there that do EMR. Epic kind of leading the way with what they do, and I know a lot of the orientations that they go through Epic updates, and so I think that's part of having a good experience in a facility. Doctors were friendly, and staff as well, and I think that goes to it. It's as a traveler, you want to go where you're welcomed, and that's something that doesn't happen on every assignment. You're there to do a job, and you do the best you can. But when you get into it, it does make it feel a little bit more comfortable to have a friendly staff and a welcoming environment when you get there. Fort Wayne, Indiana. You're very familiar with Fort Wayne.
Oh yeah. I have a nurse that's worked with us for a number of years now, based out of Muncie, and when we decided to do this Facebook Live, I don't know if she watches this or is even a fan of this channel, but she does a lot of Facebook Live. We're Facebook friends, and the first person I thought about was her, as it related to doing a broadcast like this. But she contracted there in Parkview. She contracted with even one of the smaller hospitals, I think in Huntington, that's right outside of Fort Wayne, and we really did have some good success there. I think the one gripe that we had there was that the schedule in the middle of the contract, the hospital on the unit there decided that they had made a policy where they were going to a 3P to 3A and a 3A to 3P schedule shift for everybody on the unit. And they gave the travelers pretty much the opportunity to re-sign with that new contract and that new schedule, or they were going to be putting the needs back out. So
Sarah is chiming in here with a comment in regards to the facility in Kansas, and I want to point out something to, and this has happened a number of different times where we get two sides of every story. I've had nurses at that facility who have actually sung the praises of that same facility. I wonder how often that actually does happen. It's a bad experience for one nurse and great experience for another nurse. I think it's floor dependent. I think it's nurse dependent on who you're working with, and I think that to that point, it's unfortunate that Sarah had a bad experience at this particular hospital. But again, I've had nurses that have had success at that hospital.
Yeah, I think it really does depend on the floor.
Yeah,
depends on the manager. I mean,
leadership.
Your management and leadership in any job, is so critical. You could have the best hospital and the worst leadership, and it's just going to be a disaster for everybody. And the way a nurse manages their staff. Maybe they're brand new. Maybe they are just so short staffed there that it's just put so much stress on everybody that it's kind of become a toxic environment. It's really tough to kind of judge about that. But yeah, 7 patients every night, that will wear somebody out in a very, very quick manner. And any facility that's doing that is going to have a nursing shortage. That's 100% accurate.
Yeah. I think something fun to talk about, Greg, is I had a discussion with a nurse yesterday in regards to fun travel assignments versus functional travel assignments, and that's something that we had a nice discussion in regards to fun destinations to go that may not pay as well versus the assignments that are going to pay the bills. New Orleans came up in topic for that particular nurse and going down there to have some fun, and unfortunately, a lot of the jobs that we get out of the Louisiana market aren't, overwhelmingly great in pay. But just to get them down there to experience a great destination while they go there, gets them out of their norm, gets them to travel a little bit further. And I think that's something to be said for that. I just wonder if there's any nurses out there that have any great destinations that you've taken an assignment to see a destination for that reason.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, that's kind of the root of travel is, trying to find, places that are not your everyday thing. I often think to myself, where I would go if I was a traveler, and what types of things that I would want to do. And there's so many areas of the country that I've never seen. There's a lot of places I've been to, but I kind of consider myself somebody who, does not like the, the real super populated areas, and there's a travel pair that works for us out in South Dakota, to where the stories that I hear, where they're at, it's near Mount Rushmore, to where they've bought land out there. They can ride horses. They can do pretty much whatever you want. I was actually talking to another nurse of ours in South Dakota yesterday, and at that same town they have some kind of buffalo rounding up event this weekend. And to me that just sounds, yeah, I mean, it just sounds like that would be something awesome to see. Yeah, like, I don't think I've ever even seen a buffalo.
I'm going to go with Sarah on her comments. She says Washington in the summer is great. Lived in Washington, D.C., so I can completely agree with that. Springtime cherry blossom festivals in Washington, D.C. is absolutely beautiful. You may not be speaking specifically to D.C., maybe Washington State, which I also agree to. Seattle's a beautiful place. Angela's asking in regards to, would you know if there's a strike in a specific area? Generally, we would know if there's a nursing shortage in an area due to a strike. We don't deal with a whole lot of strike contracts. So,
yeah, I mean, as far as that goes with the strike question, sometimes we'll know, sometimes we won't. I mean, I think since we've started here, and since we started the organization, I mean, I can think of one time where we've had a nurse work a strike, and the only reason that she worked that strike was because she was on contract for us already at the hospital, and basically all the other nurses went on strike, and so she was kind of pulled into the strike pool. She was offered that, and that was kind of our extent of the strike work. So it's not an area that we tout as our specialty at all. Now, we will know a lot of times, though, if it's related to an EMR conversion or something like that.
Katie has a question. Hi, Katie. How are you today? How long does it generally take to receive a phone call from a manager after submitting an application? And I think it's a great question because it varies quite a bit, Katie. I've literally had nurses called within an hour after submitting an application. I've had nurses receive a phone call after 30 days after submitting an application. So it's based on the need of the hospital. It's based on their applicant flow that they have coming in. Anything else you could think?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, and we all, oftentimes internally are always trying to shorten that time frame. Once a profile is submitted to a manager, and I'm assuming that you're talking about, kind of submitting an application to, a hospital as opposed to us. If you send us an application, we'll be on the phone faster than, you probably even want us to be, because we're eager to talk with you. But if you're referring to submitting an application to a hospital on a job, it's going to really vary. I mean, as a recruiter, I like to say I have adult ADD, and I want to go places that are going to get movement extremely fast. But on the flip side of that, when we're looking at where to submit a nurse, there's a lot that goes into, my confidence level in getting you interviewed. How long has that need been open? How many other candidates are submitted on that job? If I'm talking to you about a particular need and I know that you're one of 20 people that have been submitted and that job's been open for a week, then the likelihood of me getting you interviewed on that job, is probably not real good, because they probably have an offer out already. So, my rule and, the standard is if I can't get feedback for you within a couple days, I mean, my confidence level is gone, from 100% to, 50%, and as that goes on, I mean, we've had nurses get called within an hour of sending a file. We've had nurses get called 1 week, 2 weeks, after sending a file, and us even telling the hospital that they're not even available anymore.
Yep.
So it really is kind of all over the map. But trust us, we're trying to shorten that, time period from submission to interview, to get it as short as possible.
And looking at the nurses that I've had over the last year, the quickest returns have come from nurses that I've worked with that have basically have their applications filed in-house, that as soon as we see the job come open, we can submit them within 5-10 minutes of that job coming open, and that has happened quite a bit. And I think that's been our best success rate, is having a recruiting team that's dedicated and there for you to be able to get your application in as fast as possible. And that's one of the things that we emphasize to our nurses when we're talking to them on the phone, trying to get them to work for our agency, that we can get you placed very fast because we do have our finger on the pulse of where it needs to be to get you placed quickly. I have a question in regards to contracts in other countries. And unfortunately, at this time, no other countries, just in the 50 states that we have right here.
Going back to the strike piece, to answer your question about our nurse that was moved over to the strike, she did get strike pay. Our rate went up. The strike lasted, I think, for all of 2 days.
Yeah.
And then it was resolved. But
And then she goes back to her normal contract.
yeah, and so then it went back to the normal contract after that.
Any other questions coming in? We got about 5 more minutes to go here. Just Craig and I are here to answer whatever your questions have, whatever that might be related to.
And I would say if you're looking for an agency that's going to, give you the treatment that's going to be what you deserve, in terms of personal experience, we're an organization, that really, that's our bread and butter. We're a smaller firm and low overhead, which ultimately at the end of the day, what does that mean? That means more of the bill rate going into your pocket. Profit margins, across the industry vary from, 20, 25 to 20%. There's not much that, we won't do as a company, to really go above and beyond for a nurse. I always say, and this goes for everything in life, that you get what you pay for. So if I want, a really nice apartment and I'm willing to spend $200 a month, probably going to be very upset. And it holds true for, us in the way that we look at, how we do business. If a great candidate's coming to us, and they've got, just a ton of experience and we know they're going to represent us well, but their rate is a little bit higher than what we would normally pay, there's plenty of times that we've bent over backwards to get, somebody on contract with us that's going to represent us well.
And it's not the easiest thing in the world to go to a facility and ask them for more money. It tends to put us, behind the 8 ball, if you will. But we've done it, and we've done it successfully. It does happen. I think in my closing kind of statement I'll give in regards to our agency and what we can offer to the nurses out there. There's a lot of great reputable companies out there. We're one of many. The thing that differentiates us is that human piece. I think the honesty, the integrity, the talking to, being able to pick up a phone and call your recruiter to get them on the phone, I think is crucial when it comes to timing. When you need to talk to us, we're there for you. There's quite a few times where I've had to field phone calls at 8, 9 o'clock at night.
The other side of that, I always say my job is to get you interviewed. So you can fill out an application with any agency you want, and they'll tell you they can do everything for you. At the end of the day, my job is to get you interviewed. So as a recruiter, it falls squarely on my shoulders, to be able to put you in a position that's going to be the best. And to do that, one, I got to be able to get you submitted quickly. I got to be able to pay you competitively. And I got to be able to, make sure, that I'm representing you with your skill set, to the best of my ability. If your profile looks like, garbage, then they're not going to interview you. So all of that stuff falls squarely on my shoulder, to make sure that I can get you interviewed and that I can keep you working. Because if I can't keep you working, I can't pay your bills. And, at the end of the day,
Katie says there's a lot of positions open in Arizona right now. We have seen a flux of positions coming in a number of different markets in the Arizona area. Arizona becomes a destination for the winter months. A lot of the snowbirds, whether that be on the northeast coast or the northwest coast, like to get out of the snow. And Arizona is a place right now that does have a lot of needs. Pay not half bad. And so, we've been working on quite a few Arizona needs lately.
Yeah, we staff Dignity Health down there in Phoenix. They got a ton of needs at this point. That's a MSP account, staffed through another organization. But even for specialties, they've waived the admin fee. So we are be able to do more than we might be able to do other times there. I would say, Katie, give us a call. we can talk about Arizona and what we can do there. One of the big things they look for, I mean, are cardiac nurses. You know, if you can titrate, you know, the cardiac drips, that's pretty much a key to get in the door there. So it's, you know, I mean, we got an interview there last week. You know, unfortunately, our nurse did not have exactly what they were looking for, but they moved very quickly.
And thank you, Katie. Anything you want to mention in closing, Craig?
I don't think so. This is our first crack. We obviously had a few bugs to work out.
Hopefully we did all right for you nurses out there.
We had a camera issue, but at the end of the day, I think we made it through unscathed, and everybody is okay from the earthquake. Trust me.
You guys did great. Thank you so much for joining us. If anyone's just now tuning in or tuned in the middle, we will be posting this later today and you'll be able to watch. And then please reach out to them if you have any questions. I'll be tagging their Facebook profile so you can message them or ask them in the questions and all that stuff. So we will also be messaging the winner of the beach towel. So keep an eye out for that. So thank you all of you that watched and asked questions, and we will see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good one.
You too.